My daughter announced that I was too old to manage my own money during a family dinner I had paid for. Mom needs someone responsible to take over, Melissa said. She did not lower her voice. My son, Andrew, was sitting beside her. My 2 grandchildren were at the other end of the table. Even the server heard. I placed my fork down. Take over what? Melissa opened a leather folder. Your finances, the house, your investments, everything is getting complicated. And you're 71. I know how old I am. Last month you paid the electric bill twice. The utility company duplicated the automatic withdrawal and refunded it. You also forgot Andrew's birthday dinner. Andrew looked embarrassed. I did not forget. I declined because I had the flu. Melissa continued as though I had not spoken. She had prepared a durable power of attorney. All I needed to do was sign. The document would allow her to manage my bank accounts, sell property, communicate with insurance companies, and make financial decisions if she believed I needed help. This protects everyone, she said. I turned to Andrew. Did you know about this? She said you had agreed to discuss it. I agreed to dinner. Melissa slid a pen toward me. You don't need to be defensive. I closed the folder. I will have my attorney review it. Mom, it is a standard form. Then my attorney should recognize it quickly. Her expression told me she had expected embarrassment to do what persuasion could not. The following morning, I met with Eleanor Shaw, the estate attorney who had represented my husband and me for almost 20 years. She read the document carefully. This becomes effective immediately, she said. Not if you are incapacitated. Immediately. Your daughter could access every listed asset the moment you sign. The form also allowed Melissa to make gifts to herself and other family members. It included the authority to change beneficiary arrangements where permitted. Did she have a lawyer prepare this? Eleanor asked. Melissa's friend worked for a document preparation company. The friend's name appeared in small print at the bottom. I did not sign. Instead, I asked Eleanor to help me build a plan that protected me without handing my life to one child. Over the next month, I completed a cognitive evaluation with my physician. I passed without difficulty. I consolidated several old investment accounts. I created a revocable trust and named an independent trust company as successor trustee if 2 physicians ever determined that I could no longer manage my affairs. Andrew and Melissa would receive equal shares after my death, but neither would control the trust during my lifetime. For medical emergencies, I appointed Andrew and my longtime friend Susan to act together. Melissa was named as an alternate, not the sole decision-maker. I also changed every banking password. I did not tell Melissa immediately. I wanted to understand why she was in such a hurry. The answer came through my granddaughter Lily. She called one evening and asked whether I was selling my house. Why would you think that? Mom said when she manages your money, you'll move into that senior place near us. She said she and Dad might buy your house before it goes on the market. My house had been appraised at $840,000. Melissa and her husband had recently lost money on an investment property. She was not preparing for my decline. She was preparing to benefit from it. I invited Melissa, Andrew, and their spouses to Eleanor's office. Melissa arrived carrying the same folder. I hope we're finally resolving this, she said. We are, I answered. Eleanor explained the new trust. She described the conditions for a successor trustee and the independent management structure. She confirmed that I had voluntarily completed a medical evaluation showing no cognitive impairment. Melissa's face tightened. Why would you put strangers in charge instead of family? Because the strangers are licensed, insured, and paid to follow the document. You don't trust me. You asked me to sign immediate control of my assets in a restaurant without independent advice. That did not build trust. Andrew leaned forward. Were you planning to buy Mom's house? Melissa looked at me. Who told you that? The question was an answer. She said the house was too large. She said I would be safer near her. She said selling directly to family would save commissions. When Eleanor asked how Melissa planned to finance the purchase, she admitted that she expected me to provide a substantial private loan. In other words, I would lend my daughter the money to buy my own house at a family discount, then move into a facility whose monthly fee would come from what remained. Andrew stood up. This is why you wanted the power of attorney? I was trying to make a plan. For her or for you? The meeting ended without an answer. Melissa did not speak to me for 4 months. She told relatives I had chosen a corporation over my children. She suggested my attorney had manipulated me. I responded only once, by mailing her a copy of the physician's evaluation and the page confirming Eleanor had represented me since Melissa was in college. Then I returned to my life. I joined a walking group. I repaired the back deck. I traveled with Susan to Montreal. Every month, I received a clear statement from the trust company showing exactly where my money was invested. Andrew visited regularly, but I did not reward him for taking my side. He remained an equal beneficiary because estate plans should reflect considered values, not temporary alliances. The first sign of change came when Melissa asked to meet without her husband. We sat in a public garden near my house. The investment property is in foreclosure, she said. She and her husband had hidden debt from each other. Her plan for my house had been part of a desperate attempt to save theirs. Why didn't you ask me for help? Because you might have said no. So you tried to remove my ability to say it. She cried then, not because she had lost control of my assets, but because she finally heard the truth in that sentence. I did not rescue the investment property. I paid for 3 sessions with a financial counselor and offered temporary help with my grandchildren's school transportation, while Melissa and her husband sold what they could. They lost the property. They did not lose their home. Our relationship recovered slowly. Melissa now asks before offering advice. I listen before refusing it. She remains disappointed that she is not my financial agent, but she understands the decision will not change because she is disappointed. On my 72nd birthday, we returned to the same restaurant. When the server brought the check, Melissa reached for it. I invited you, she said. I pay. After dinner, she handed me a small gift. Inside was a fountain pen. For signing your own decisions, she said. I use that pen often. The trust also changed the way my family discussed aging. Before, every conversation began with what I might lose: memory, balance, independence, judgment. After the meeting, I insisted that we talk about support in specific terms. I created a written plan for transportation if I stopped driving. I chose 2 assisted living communities I would consider if the house became unsafe. I recorded my preferences for medical care. I gave copies to Andrew, Melissa, Susan, my physician, and the trust company. None of those decisions required surrendering control today. Melissa eventually attended one of my annual meetings with the trust officer. She expected a cold corporate presentation. Instead, the officer asked me about travel, charitable giving, maintenance on the house, and how much cash I wanted available for ordinary life. On the drive home, Melissa said, "They listen to you. That is what they are paid to do. I thought they would restrict you. You were the one who brought me a document with no restrictions on you." She winced, but she did not argue. The following year, Melissa's friend tried to convince her own mother to sign a similar immediate power of attorney. Melissa told the woman to take it to an independent lawyer first. Her friend became angry and accused her of interfering. "Now I understand how you felt," Melissa told me later. "I thought helping meant getting the signature. I did not understand that real help protects the right to refuse." That was more valuable than any apology she could have written. I used it to approve the deck repair, open a scholarship account for Lily, and sign the reservation for my next trip. Age has changed many things. I move more slowly. I write appointments down. I ask for help with technology that seems designed to make simple tasks mysterious. But needing assistance with one thing does not surrender authority over everything. The safest plan was never the document that gave my daughter immediate control. It was the plan that allowed me to remain generous, protected, and unmistakably in charge of my own life. I believed the signed plan would calm Melissa. Instead, it frightened her. The document she had brought me would have given her immediate authority. The plan I created with my attorney gave help only when specific conditions were met. To Melissa, that difference felt like rejection. To me, it was the entire point. She began calling more often. At first, the question sounded caring. Had I taken my medication? Did I remember the dentist appointment? Was I still driving after dark? Then the questions became inspections. How much had I spent at the garden center? Why had I withdrawn cash? Who was the man repairing the deck? I answered when I wanted to. When the questions crossed into surveillance, I said so. Melissa insisted she was trying to protect me from being exploited. I reminded her that protection which ignores my wishes is only control wearing a worried expression. That sentence ended several conversations. Then my bank called. A woman identifying herself as my daughter had requested information about my accounts. She said I was becoming forgetful and that new legal documents were being prepared. The employee followed privacy rules and gave her nothing, but the bank wanted to verify my safety. I knew immediately who had called. Melissa denied it at first. When I told her the call had been recorded, she admitted she had spoken with the bank. She said she only wanted to know whether unusual withdrawals had occurred. I asked what evidence made her suspect exploitation. She mentioned the deck repair, my scholarship gift for Lily, and the reservation for my trip. All three were choices I had discussed openly. What troubled Melissa was not that the money had disappeared. It was that I had used it without her approval. I told her not to contact my financial institutions again. She cried and said I was shutting her out. I said she was confusing access with closeness. For 2 weeks, we did not speak. During that silence, I completed a full evaluation with a geriatric physician My attorney recommended it because a current record of my decision-making capacity could protect me if anyone later claimed I was unable to manage my affairs. The appointment lasted nearly 3 hours. I answered memory questions, discussed medications, explained recent financial decisions, and completed problem-solving exercises. The physician concluded that I was fully capable, with ordinary age-related lapses that did not impair judgment. I felt both relieved and angry. I should not have needed a medical professional to confirm my ownership of my own mind. Yet, I understood the value of evidence. Feelings are persuasive inside families. Records are persuasive when feelings become allegations. My attorney placed the report with my estate documents. We also notified the bank, my investment advisor, and my physician that Melissa had no present authority. Any request in her name required direct verification with me or the independent fiduciary named in the plan. The safeguards made me feel safer, but they deepened Melissa's resentment. She told relatives I had become suspicious and secretive. One cousin called to ask whether I was lonely. An aunt suggested that older people sometimes become paranoid about money. No one asked why a competent woman would need secrecy from a daughter who was contacting her bank. I invited the concerned relatives to tea. 5 came. Melissa did not. I placed the original document she wanted me to sign beside the new plan, with account numbers and private amounts covered. I showed them the paragraph granting immediate authority, and the sections in my plan requiring medical confirmation and independent oversight. Then I showed them the capacity evaluation. The room became very quiet. My cousin apologized. The aunt who mentioned paranoia asked why Melissa wanted immediate control. I said that was a question for Melissa, but fear and debt often make control look like responsibility. I had recently learned that Melissa and her husband were behind on their mortgage. She had not told me. Lily mentioned overhearing an argument about foreclosure. When I asked Melissa directly, she said the situation was temporary and none of my business. I did not point out the irony. I simply asked whether her financial problems influenced her urgency about my trust. She became furious. She said she would never steal from me. I told her I had not accused her of theft. I had asked whether her need had influenced her judgment. People do not have to plan a crime to become dangerous with unchecked authority. Sometimes they simply make one desperate exception and promise themselves they will repair it before anyone notices. Melissa hung up. 3 days later, she came to my house with Lily. My granddaughter looked embarrassed to be there. Melissa said the bank would begin foreclosure proceedings if they did not pay $28,000 within 30 days. She asked for a loan. The old version of our relationship would have made the answer immediate. I would have transferred the money because my granddaughter lived in that house, and because Melissa's panic would have felt like proof of obligation. The new plan required a pause. I asked for the mortgage statements, household budget, tax returns, and a list of other debts. Melissa accused me of treating her like a stranger. I said a stranger would not be asking for $28,000. Lily stared at the floor. I told Melissa we would continue the conversation without her daughter present. Children should not be used as visual evidence of what an adult might lose. Melissa sent Lily to the garden, then produced part of the paperwork. The mortgage was not the only problem. There were tax debts, credit cards, and a loan against her husband's retirement account. the total exceeded $90,000. Paying the arrears would delay the crisis, not solve it. I offered to pay directly for an appointment with a nonprofit housing counselor and a bankruptcy attorney. I also offered Lily a temporary room if the family lost the house. I did not offer $28,000. Melissa said the new trust had made me cruel. I told her the trust had made it harder for fear to spend my money before facts arrived. She left without saying goodbye. The housing counselor confirmed that selling the house voluntarily was their best option. They had enough equity to pay the mortgage, settle part of the debt, and move into a rental. Melissa resisted because she believed selling would humiliate her. She wanted my savings to protect the appearance of stability. I understood that temptation. Appearances can feel like shelter. In reality, they are expensive curtains hanging in front of a damaged wall. Her husband eventually agreed with the counselor. They listed the house, accepted an offer, and moved into a smaller townhouse. Lily changed schools, but remained in the same district. No one became homeless. No future was destroyed. Melissa did not speak to me during the move. I helped Lily pack her books after Melissa reluctantly permitted it. I did not criticize her parents. I told her that houses are places, not measures of a family's worth. She asked whether her mother had lost the house because I would not help. The question revealed what Melissa had said. I answered carefully. Her parents had debts larger than one payment could solve. I had paid for professional advice and offered a safe room if needed. The decision to sell belonged to the adults responsible for the mortgage. Lily nodded, though I could see the answer was painful. Months later, she told me that hearing the truth without blame helped her understand the move. She had believed one check from me could have restored everything. When she learned the full amount of debt, she realized the check would only have postponed the same outcome. Melissa needed longer. She blamed the attorney, the advisor, the physician, and the trust company. Anyone who supported my autonomy became an outsider influencing me against family. That accusation is useful to controlling people because it turns independent advice into betrayal. I continued following the plan. I met with the fiduciary once a year. We reviewed investments, insurance, housing options, and the circumstances that would activate assistance. I recorded a video explaining my preferences in my own words. I named 2 people, not Melissa alone, to confirm major health decisions. I also created a personal care agreement for the future. If a relative provided substantial caregiving, the duties and compensation would be written down. No one would have to pretend exhausting labor was free. And no one could later claim vague sacrifices entitled them to my house. The process was not gloomy. It was liberating. Once the difficult questions were answered, I could return to living. I traveled to Santa Fe with a friend. I hired the deck contractor I chose. I enrolled in a ceramics class and produced several bowls that leaned visibly to one side. Melissa saw photographs online and told Lily I was wasting money. I blocked her from viewing the account. That may sound petty, but access to information is also a boundary. I did not owe anyone a daily window into choices they planned to criticize. The change came after Lily graduated from high school. I had opened the scholarship account years earlier, and the money was enough to cover part of her community college tuition. The fund paid the school directly. Melissa asked whether the remaining balance could be given to her, so she could combine it with other household expenses. I said no. The account belonged to Lily's education. For once, Melissa did not argue. She asked whether textbooks and transportation qualified. We reviewed the rules together. She collected receipts and completed the forms. The process made her impatient, but it also showed her something important. Structure did not prevent help. It directed help toward the purpose I had chosen. Lily studied occupational therapy. During her second year, she completed a unit about elder autonomy and supported decision-making. She asked if she could interview me for an assignment. We sat at my kitchen table with a recorder between us. She asked what older adults feared most when accepting help. I told her many of us fear that admitting one limitation will be treated as surrender of every right. If I ask someone to drive at night, they may decide I should stop driving entirely. If I need help with a password, they may expect access to all my accounts. If I forget one appointment, they may begin speaking about me instead of to me. Lily listened carefully. She asked what good support looked like. I said it begins with the smallest amount of assistance that solves the actual problem. It explains choices. It allows risk. It respects a person's values, even when relatives would choose differently. After the interview, Lily asked whether she could share the recording with Melissa. I agreed. My daughter called the following evening. Her voice was quiet. She said she had listened twice. Then she admitted something she had never said before. When her finances began collapsing, she imagined managing my accounts would solve both our problems. She told herself she could move a temporary loan from my investments, save the house, and repay it after her husband received a bonus. She had not yet chosen an amount, but she had considered it. The immediate power of attorney would have made that possible. I gripped the telephone and said nothing. Melissa began to cry. She said she hated herself for the thought. I told her the thought explained why safeguards mattered. Love had not made her immune to desperation. My refusal had protected both of us from a decision that could have ended our relationship permanently. She asked whether I could forgive her for something she had only imagined. I said forgiveness was not the first task. Honesty was. She needed to tell her husband, her counselor, and the fiduciary, because she remained named as one possible future helper. Then the professionals and I would decide whether that role was still appropriate. Melissa agreed. After review, I removed her from direct financial authority, but kept her as a healthcare advocate alongside Lily. The change was not revenge. It matched responsibility to demonstrated strength. Melissa was attentive in medical settings and understood my preferences, but financial stress had once distorted her judgment. She signed the acknowledgement without protest. That was the beginning of our repair. We met for short walks. We avoided discussing money for several months. Melissa asked about my ceramics class and did not comment on the cost. I asked about the townhouse and did not compare it with the house they sold. We practiced being mother and daughter without managing each other's lives. When I needed cataract surgery, she drove me to the clinic. At registration, the nurse handed Melissa a form. She passed it to me and waited. I asked her to read one paragraph because the print was small. She read it aloud without reaching for the pen. I signed my own name. That moment was ordinary and profound. After surgery, she stayed for one night. The care agreement was not necessary for such a brief visit, but we still discussed expectations. She would prepare meals, manage eye drops according to the written schedule, and leave the following afternoon unless I requested more help. She did exactly that. At the door, she said she finally understood why an end time could make help feel safer. Without one, assistance can quietly become residence, authority, and obligation. With one, both people know what has been agreed. The following year, I fell in the garden and injured my hip. This time, the situation was more serious. Surgery was not required, but I needed rehabilitation and could not live alone for 6 weeks. The plan activated as designed. My physician documented the temporary limitation. The fiduciary paid bills from the protected account. Melissa and Lily coordinated medical appointments, while a professional aide handled bathing and exercises. I remained part of every decision. No one had to seize control in a panic, because roles already existed. Melissa wanted me to move permanently into her townhouse. I thanked her and declined. We reviewed alternatives, and I chose an apartment in a retirement community with independent living, transportation, and optional care. Selling my house was emotional. I had lived there for 38 years, yet the decision was mine, made after visiting 3 communities and reviewing costs with advisors. Melissa accompanied me without campaigning for her preferred option. At the closing, the buyer asked whether I was sure. I looked at my daughter and smiled. Yes, I said. Being sad about a choice does not mean someone else made it. My new apartment had a balcony large enough for herbs and 2 crooked ceramic bowls. I brought the chair from my old deck and the photograph of Lily receiving her diploma. The space was smaller, but my life did not feel reduced. The proceeds from the house entered the trust. Part funded my care. Part increased Lily's educational support. A final portion would remain for inheritance if my own needs did not use it first. I made that priority explicit. My money was for my life before it was for anyone's inheritance. Melissa once would have heard selfishness in that sentence. Now she repeated it to a neighbor whose children were pressuring her to keep an unsafe house so they could inherit it. Watching my daughter defend another woman's autonomy showed me how completely a painful lesson can change direction. On the anniversary of my move, Melissa gave me a small wooden box. Inside were copies of the first trust document she brought me and the final supported decision plan. Between them, she placed a card. The first paper showed what I feared, she wrote. The second showed who you are. I asked if she still feared losing me. She said yes. Then she added that fear was hers to manage, not mine to obey. We held each other for a long time. Age has continued to change me. I use a cane on uneven ground. I sometimes ask Lily to organize transportation through an application I find confusing. Melissa attends important medical appointments when I invite her. The fiduciary sends simple reports, and I review them with an advisor who answers to me. There may come a day when I cannot make every decision. The plan does not deny that possibility. It prepares for it without declaring it early. Capacity is not a light that switches from bright to dark at a certain birthday. A person may need help in one area and remain fully capable in another. A good plan preserves choice wherever choice still exists. That is what Melissa tried to skip when she placed a document before me and said it was for my safety. She wanted certainty in advance. She wanted grief, risk, inconvenience, and disagreement removed from the future. No paper can do that. The best paper can define who speaks, when they speak, what evidence is required, and how the person at the center remains a person, rather than a problem to be managed. Recently, Lily became licensed in her profession. She now works with older adults recovering from injuries. She told me that before every assessment, she remembers our conversation at the kitchen table. She asks clients what they want to return to doing. She does not begin with what relatives want them to stop. That may be the most lasting part of my plan, not the trust assets or the medical forms, but a granddaughter who learned that assistance should expand a person's life, not quietly replace it. Melissa learned too. When she visits, she knocks. When she worries, she asks whether I want advice. When I say no, she may still look concerned, but she respects the answer. Sometimes love remains worried. Respect is what love does next. The document Melissa first brought me promised control and called it safety. The plan I chose created safeguards while leaving room for my voice, my mistakes, my pleasures, and my future changes of mind. I did not reject my daughter by refusing her pen. I protected the chance for us to remain mother and daughter instead of becoming an account holder and the person waiting for permission. That chance has been worth more than every dollar in the trust.